Welcome back to They Did What? Your source for the internet's craziest, most entertaining stories, where I go with them, analyze them, and most certainly make fun of them. Today, or in this case tonight, we'll be going over part 8 of the story, which is titled, I Ditched My Bride on Our Honeymoon, blah, 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 blah. And it's all about the guy, as you all recall, the whole... I'm not going to go through the whole recap. That makes no sense. You all know what happened. Well, where things left off is when the guy is formulating his plan with his dad and uncle and confidants, and now involving his sister, where he's going to get his son and to put the son in a better situation than he is right now, and his own temporary custody, and it's about to become a giant mess. And in the previous one, you had enter Tony, this so-called college friend of his girlfriend at the time, who became his wife, and who I wasn't aware of. So now we'll continue on with this adventure. He says here, continuing on, here's what Amy told me about her talk with our mother. Jill went out with Tony again that Saturday night. Let me guess, just for dinner? Sure. Lots of yelling and screaming until Jill left for her date. Then Jane stayed in her in the room fuming. Amy was able to talk to my mother about my son. Amy and her son are living with me. Like Amy, my mother was initially opposed to it. How could they just do this to Jill? She'll be devastated by their plotting against her. Amy reminded her that because of Jane, Jill told Amy and my mother Jill no longer needed them. That was Jane talking. Jill really doesn't really want to exclude them from her son's life. Jane has to go. That is the only way to win Jill back. She'll be forced to choose between her son and Jane. She'll choose her son. Are you sure about that? My mother, Amy, and I are doing nothing illegal. Without a custody agreement, I have as much right to my son as Jill did. They'll just be getting rid of Jane. You know, this Tony clown can actually be useful, because if she gets close with Tony, she'll, well, not need Jane as much unless she gets to enjoy sausage one night and fish tacos the other night, and vice versa. Maybe she can have sausage and fish tacos all at the same time. You never know. I asked Amy if my mother was concerned about Tony. Amy said my mother asked Amy if she knew about Tony. Amy said she told me about him. Jill never had. But he was just a friend and nothing to worry about. My mother told Amy she had lots of male friends like Tony over the years. Like Tony, each of them was just a friend. Tony is probably someone to worry about. My mother wants Jill and my son back with me, not 250 miles away with Tony. My mother knows what a just a friend really means. Amy told our mother that they should worry about that one thing at a time. Get rid of Jane and then worry about Tony. They'll get rid of him later. Amy realized that she was telling me that even my mother does not believe this. Tony was just a friend, just Jill's friend, not her lover. Amy didn't want me to think Jill was or is hooking up with this guy. Not the way to get me to reconcile with Jill. And that's right. Their ultimate plan here is to get you to reconcile with Jill. They do not give up. But you all thought I was going to take off my sunglasses in that moment. Nope. You never see in my eyes, guys. She looked at me. I should just take them off one day and start reading and see what you guys say. It'd be hilarious. She looked at me and said she's telling me what our mother said because that's just how my mother thinks. It says nothing about Jill. My mother and Jill are very different people. If Jill says Tony is just a friend, then Tony is just a friend. What a steaming pile of crap. Jill will never lie about this to Amy. Don't think for a minute that Jill and Tony are or ever have been anything more than buddies. Like I said, bed buddies. Define buddies. I asked Amy if she ever told one guy that another guy was just a friend. She thought about it and told me that she did that a few times in college. And no, before I asked, it wasn't true. She didn't want the first guy to know that she was sleeping with the other guy, so she just said he was just a friend. But that's not something Jill would ever do. Jill's always been faithful to me. Yeah, sure. Amy looked at me in the eye and said she would never lie to me about that. Man, she's good. I have seen women convincingly lie without blinking and put on the best stories ever when I know they were lying. And many of you guys have as well. And certainly heard stories about this. My mother agreed to help us take my son. Jill and Jane went to the gym Monday after my mother got home from teaching school. Amy and my mother packed up my son's stuff and Amy's stuff. I went and got my son. We moved Amy, her son, and my son into my house. This is the first time I felt some comfort since I found out Jill was pregnant and that it was my child. According to what my mom told Amy and me later, when Jill and Jane arrived home, Jill became hysterical. Well, duh. can we expect? Jane just started cursing and yelling. Nothing new for Jane. My mother said she hid in her room. Wouldn't it make sense for the mother to explain what's going on to her, assuming that just the baby was taken? Jane called the police. The police arrived at my house about an hour after I picked up my son. Here we go. The two cops said they were investigating a child, Abduction. I have to spell these things out because you never know with YouTube. Very serious. Where is the boy? I showed them my son sleeping on his crib. Okay, so let's leap forward. They showed up at your house. I told the police he is my son. I had his birth certificate with my name as the father ready to show them. I told them there is no custody agreement in place. My son is now staying with me. If they had any doubts about my right to my son, call his mother and ask her to produce any custody agreement, let alone one which gives her custody. Tell her to produce a judgment that says my son is supposed to live with her and not with me. She cannot. Yeah, that's all fine and dandy, but if you get the wrong cops, they're going to be like, not going to care. Amy was there feeding her son. They asked who she was. She said she was my sister and showed them her ID. She then confirmed everything I told them. They decided to call their sergeant to come and figure out what to do. I'm not surprised. She arrived 10 minutes later. Oh, a female sergeant. Yippee. When I saw it was a woman, I thought, fuck, this is going to go badly. But I told myself to keep cool. The two cops summed up for the sergeant what Amy and I told them. She looked at my peaceful son sleeping in the crib and then took the pictures hanging on the walls of me holding my son at the hospital and my mother's. Very smart to hang those up on the wall, dude. Very smart. The police sergeant asked to talk to Amy alone. The two cops and I stood and stared at each other while Amy took the sergeant into her bedroom to talk. They came out about 5 minutes later. Amy was smiling. The sergeant asked for my wife's telephone number. One of the cops gave her the phone number and used to call the cops. She called and Jane answered. Jane had called the police from her phone. The sergeant identified herself and asked for Jill. Jane said that she could talk for Jill and answer any questions. I think the sergeant wants to talk to Jill, the mother. There was really nothing much to talk about. They wanted their son back. Have I been arrested yet? Can they come get their son? The sergeant asked Jane again to put Jill on the phone. Even though the sergeant wasn't on speaker, we could hear Jill crying hysterically. The sergeant told her to calm down. She waited while Jill continued to howl. She patiently told Jill to calm down. They needed to talk. Jill quieted down somewhat. She was still sobbing and started yelling that I stole the baby. The sergeant told her to stop yelling. Jill stopped yelling. I'm picturing Sergeant Callahan or Lieutenant Callahan from Police Academy. You remember that crazy movie series? She was the blonde with the gigantic tits. You know, I picture her yelling. It's Lieutenant Callahan's back. Whatever the fuck her. I think she was a lieutenant. I haven't watched those movies in 30 years. Longer. The sergeant asked if I'm Jill's husband. Yes. Is the baby my son? Yes. Is there a custody agreement which gives custody to her or me? No. Jill replied, there is no custody agreement, but mothers always have custody of their children. Why is Jill even being asked about a custody agreement? They don't need a custody agreement. Jill's his mother. Mothers have custody. When can she come and get her son? We can hear Jane in the background yelling for Jill to tell the cops to do their job. That's a little unwise. They were coming for the baby right now. Tell the cops to arrest me so they can get their son without any more trouble from me. The sergeant told Jill to tell whoever was yelling in the background to be quiet. Jill told Jane to shut up. The sergeant went on to say she wants to confirm that there's no custody agreement in place giving custody to Jill. Jill said yes, but a baby should always be with his mother. The sergeant told Jill this is a matter for a judge to settle, not the police. If Jill feels she should have custody, get in front of a judge and have the judge resolve it. The sergeant advised Jill not to try to take the boy back by forcing her way and leave. Leave it to a judge or come to some arrangement with me. If nothing else, the police are leaving. Jill went back into hysterics. Jane went back to yelling and cursing. The sergeant hung up the phone. I'm sure your neighbors next to you loved all that drama. The sergeant told me she's writing this up as a domestic dispute. She'll make sure the judge sees it when we get before the judge. And we should get before a judge as soon as possible. This is not a good situation for any of us. Get it resolved. She smiled and said, it seems as though my boy is where he should be, but make it official. I thanked her and the cops for their help. Okay. At least she had that little comment about, looks like the baby's where he should be. Will that help? Will she be a witness in front of the judge? I don't know. She gave me a card, told me to call her when we have a court date and the name of the judge. I'll find the police report about this very helpful. Also, call the sergeant directly if there's any more trouble. If my wife or whoever was yelling on the phone show up to try to take the baby, call her or 911. Don't get into a fight with them. I'll lose that fight, and they left. Good advice. What a relief. They could have arrested me and Amy or just taken the baby back to his mother or called child services to take my son. We got the best outcome possible. For now. Amy had not stopped smiling since she and the sergeant finished their talk in the bedroom. Amy hates Jane, clearly. I asked Amy what the sergeant and her talked about. Amy said the sergeant asked Amy what was going on. Amy explained about Jill and my separation. The three wives were living together at my mom's when Jane, Jill's lover, showed up. The sergeant asked what was that all about. I'm sure the sergeant wished she didn't ask that question. The three wives in the same house, where were their husbands? Amy told her all the husbands and wives were fighting over what Jill and I should do. Reconcile or divorce. Amy looked at me and said that was the sort of the truth. Amy told the sergeant that since Jane arrived, there has been nothing but trouble. Fist fights and arguments. I was afraid my son would get hurt, and Amy agreed to take care of my son and her son here. Amy doesn't want her boy to be around Jane either. Jane is crazy, so we took our sons out of the nut house. We did nothing illegal. If Jane leaves, Amy told the sergeant, I have no problem returning the boy to his mother's care, but neither Amy or I want our sons in my mother's house with Jane there. Amy told the sergeant to call Jill. Everything here is peaceful. My son is contentedly asleep. Her son is happily eating his dinner. When the police arrived, my sister and I were relaxing, enjoying being together with our kids. Yeah, you were all sitting there waiting for the cops to show up, you know? You're like, oh, here they come. Everybody look normal. When she calls Jill, the sergeant will immediately understand why we can't have our sons there. Nothing but yelling, rage, and hysterics in my mother's house. Not a good environment for anyone, especially two babies. Amy continued to tell the sergeant that I've been asking Jill for a custody agreement since the baby was born. Jill refuses to even talk about it. Aha. My lawyer is trying to get that before the judge. Amy said I had no choice but to have my son live with me. Amy volunteered to help with childcare. We're doing just fine. Our sons are doing just fine. The police should have never been called. Once the situation with my mother's is resolved, once Jane is gone, we can sit down and calmly discuss the future. Until then, having my son living with me is the only option. Yeah, I like that part of the calmly discuss the future line there. Yeah, sure. There ain't no calm going on here. With all her help, with all her faults, and she has many, my sister came through for me. I gave her a hug. Jill called Amy a few minutes later. Amy put Jill on the speaker. No hysterics now, just fury. We listened to Jill rant. We could hear Jane in the background yelling too, adding her 2 cents about what despicable people Amy and I are. The main part of Jill's rant was how could Amy do this to Jill? Well, let's go back to the whole your sister came through for you and you gave her a hug. Your sister's not doing this because she loves you or for your kid. She's doing this for her. She's doing this to get revenge on Jane. And she wants you back with Jill for her picture-perfect family thing and probably thinks you get back with her. Then maybe she can get Alex back with her. So don't think for a second this is about loyalty and love for you. No. Amy is a useful tool for your plan, nothing more. And don't think for a second otherwise, my friend. I want to give you that dose of reality. And I think all the guys here can agree with me. Anyway, Jill brought up every bad thing Amy did to Jill since they first met, since they were 5 years old. So they do that to them too. You all know darn well how many of you guys have had gotten to a fight or an argument with your girlfriend or wife, and they bring up shit everything you've done for 20 fucking years. 20 years ago on September 2nd, 2004, you forgot to take out the garbage. You get my point? They're doing that shit to each other too. Lots of bad things. Jill never did anything to Amy to warrant this betrayal. Jill was always a good friend to Amy. How could Amy take her baby from her? What sort of person steals a baby from the mother? Amy listened and wanted for Jill to wind down. When Jill was finished, Jill was still yelling Jane was yelling in the background. Amy told Jill to tell Jane to shut up. Jill yelled to Jane to shut up, and Jane shut up. Again, who lives next to your mom? Your mom's in the bedroom with freaking noise canceling headsets on or something. But what about the neighbors hearing all this drama? Amy said she can have her baby back when my mother's place is no longer an insane asylum. As soon as Jane is gone for good, back in Guadalupe, I have no problem with my son being back with Jill. Jill can see her son anytime she wants, as long as Jane doesn't come with. Jill doesn't have to steal the baby back. Jill asked if she could come and live my place too. Yeah, sure. Amy looked at me hopefully. Say what I tell you. I could hear what Jill was saying, and she could hear me through Amy's phone. I said, absolutely not. Also, I told them Jill will have to schedule her visits with me, but through Amy. I don't trust Jill. Yeah, well, I wouldn't trust Amy either, dude. I don't want her to be alone with Amy and the baby. I wouldn't take any chance that there will be a physical fight over my son or that Jill would show up there with Jane. Jane is not allowed in my house. I will try to make it as easy as possible for Jill to spend time with her son, just under conditions I control. Jill didn't have much choice, so she agreed to my terms. Besides, having to get up to feed my son and change his diaper, I had the most peaceful nights I've had in months. Yeah, I bet. I took my son last Monday evening, earlier that day, knowing I was going to get my son later that day. I called an agency that handles nannies. They sent over 5 applicants on Tuesday. 1 man and 4 women. 1 man? Yeah, no. It's Mary Poppins only. They all seemed highly qualified. Since I had no idea what I was supposed to be looking for in a nanny, I decided to go with my gut. None of them seemed right to me. I kept the resumes, but asked the agency to send some more people for me to interview. We installed cameras at all our conversation sites. It reduces theft and vandalism. I called the guy we use and told him I want hidden cameras for my house. Amy had an appointment with her OBGYN on Tuesday. While Amy was gone, between nanny interviews, they put cameras in my living room, the kitchen, and the bedroom where my son sleeps. It is truly amazing. I have to look hard to see the cameras, and I know where they are. The video and audio are being recorded, but I can also watch live from my phone, tablet, or computer. Jill asked Amy if it was okay for me to visit her son Tuesday night. Okay, she arrived after dinner. She took her son and sat in the living room with Amy, her son, and me. Oh, I'm sure that was pleasant. Jill asked how I am. I told her fine now that I had my son out of that crazy situation Jill created at my mother's. Jill was taken aback at my blaming her for the insanity at my mother's. But I guess she decided not to fight with me. Oh, she's not going to fight with you because she knows you control things right now. And of course, oh, it's your fault. Instead, she asked if we could talk. I told her I had nothing to say and wasn't interested in anything she had to say. Amy got up and said she was going to go put her son down, leaving Jill and me in the living room alone. Well, no shit. Of course she's doing that. I guess that was their plan. Ding, ding, ding. Leave me alone with Jill and my son so so Jill can tell me a bunch of lies to get me to forgive her and take her back. That's why I told her not to trust your sister. Jill said she was going to talk and I could listen or not. I debated about what I should do. I didn't want to listen to this crap, but I was not going to get up and go, leaving her alone with my son. She could be out of here with him in 2 seconds. I didn't think it was right to tell her to go home. She's only been there a few minutes. Besides, her need to explain was not going away. If I threw her out the next time she was here, she'd still want to talk. Forbidding her from seeing her son would be a problem with the judge. You can have her there. You're just not going to talk to her. Put on your friggin' headsets and listen to me on your headsets while she's there singing Rockabye Baby to your son and rocking him or whatever. Doesn't mean you have to listen to her. No way would I get custody if I didn't allow Jill to spend time with him. She was going to see him without me present, and I had to let her see him. I had no choice but to listen. I told her again I wasn't interested in talking. She's like the fucking Borg. Resistance is futile. She and your sister aren't going to stop. She started talking about what happened in Guadalupe. I told her I know what happened in Guadalupe. Old news. She said she returned because she wanted to be with me. Not Jane, not anyone else. She returned because she was pregnant and she needed someone to pay for the fucking baby. She repeated that she didn't understand how she could come under Jane's spell, but she did. It's her Caribbean voodoo spell. Now she's back in the States. Whew. Magically went away thanks to Christianity. Jill could not resist the attention Jane was giving her. That was bad, but it was over now. I had no reason to be concerned about her. Jane was just a friend. I laughed. Yeah, I'm laughing too. Jane paused, waiting for me to stop laughing. I figured I can just sit here and listen or have some fun poking holes in Jill's lies. When we got in front of the judge, Jill would have a different story than the one she was going to tell me right now. But what she tells me now is now being recorded. I decided to have some fun with her. I asked Jill why Jane is here, and she and Jane are done. Jill said she kept in touch after they left Guadalupe. Jane was in love with Jill and would do anything for Jill. Jane knew that Jill no longer had romantic feelings for Jane, but Jane believed that she could rekindle those feelings. Yeah, by acting psycho. Jane asked if she could come here and help Jill through the birth. I told Jill that she and I were done. I would not be with her through the pregnancy. Jill thought she could use the moral support Jane provides, so she agreed to let Jane come. She has been supportive. Jane has always had her back, but they're just friends now. Jane wants a lot more body parts than her back. I asked why Jane is still here. Jill says she's been thinking it's time for Jane to return home. She's been putting off the confrontation, telling Jane to go home with cause. But it is time. Jill will tell Jane to go home when Jill gets home tonight. He says, SSM, I'm writing this to you on a Saturday after this talk with Jill last Tuesday. Jane is still my mom's. According to my mother, Jill has not asked Jane to leave. Shocker. The only confrontations are about Tony. Looks like Jill is keeping her options open. As all gals do. I asked Jill what her plans are now. She said her only plan is to have a happy family and grow old with me and our son. Again, resistance is futile. But you have to resist anyway. I said it's not going to happen, and she knows it. Is she planning to go back to Guadalupe with Jane? She said Guadalupe has its attractions, but she's not going anywhere with our son. Since I won't allow her to take our son with her, Guadalupe is out of the question. She'll stay here and get her teaching job back. She'll keep trying to convince me that we can still have a life together. We've been planning since high school. So I asked if I agreed to her having custody of her son. She will raise him here. She replied, yes, absolutely. This is her home. I wouldn't trust this broad any further than I can throw her. I asked how Tony's doing. Jill turned pale. Why? Why turn pale? The color drained from her face. Jill said Amy told her she talked to me about Tony. Tony was just a friend from college. So here we go. They took some of the same classes and studied together. Define studying. He's heard this whole studying thing before in high school. They hung out with the same group at college. The group included both sexes, but that was it. She never had any romantic interest in Tony. Tony always had girlfriends and was not interested in Jill romantically either. As friends do, they kept in touch, and Tony is just a friend. See, now you know it's very dangerous when Tony has lots of girlfriends. If Tony had no girl who wanted anything to do with him, then maybe you wouldn't have to worry as much. Well, not that you worry anymore. Jill said she didn't tell me about Tony because she knows how I feel about her having male friends. Well, there you go. She went against your wishes. Once again, proving her true character. We agreed no male friends for her, no female friends for me. But this was innocent. And telling her she can't have male friends was a slap in the face. Oh, kiss my ass. It's saying she can't control herself. You've proven you can't control yourself. That's why Jane is here. That's why we're in this whole situation, because you can't control yourself. Remember her saying that she couldn't control herself because of the attention she was getting from Jane? Right there. That's proved why he did what he did. That she's like a child who needs supervision. I had to laugh at that. I said she went off to live with Jane in Guadalupe after knowing Jane for only a few days. She stayed with her for 5 months even though she was pregnant. She's telling me now she doesn't understand what came over her. That Jane put her under a spell and gave her lots of attention. That certainly proves how much self-control Jill has. Thank you. I asked her if she was completely delusional. Take a look in the mirror. She's a selfish child who does need supervision. She looked down, she started crying, and I let her cry. Hobag Handbook, Chapter 2. Of course, start crying. And this child is a teacher that helps, shapes, and quote-unquote educates young minds. I asked her, why is she dating Tony now? She says she's not dating anyone. Bullshit. She's back from Guadalupe, and he's here for his job. They got together to talk about old times. It was a break from the fighting and stress of my mother's. Tony's a good-looking guy who's always flattering Jill. Yeah. Bullcrap. Her nose is growing like Pinocchio. Always building her up. Always a cheerleader for her. Very caring, very complimentary. Constantly telling Jill how wonderful she is. He is a welcome relief from everything she's been through. She just had a baby. She's fat and ugly. She's under a lot of stress because of me hating her and the situation of my mother's. It's nice having someone build her up with confidence. She's not getting that from me. She wishes she was. Like I care. I asked what Tony wants with Jill now. Why is he hanging around? Jill said Tony figures our marriage is done. Frankly, he's here because he wants to get with Jill. Shocker. I liked college when he was just a silly flirt. He's not interested in romantic relationships with Jill. He keeps asking Jill back to his hotel room. Very flattering considering Jill had a baby 3 weeks ago. A huge boost for Jill's self-esteem. Shocker. Just what she needs now. She just wishes it was coming from me. Don't worry. She's not interested in having sex with him. She smiled and said she'll probably put the baby down if I want to go to my bedroom with her right now. Oh my God. She shouldn't have intercourse yet, too soon after the birth, but she's willing to risk it with me. Maybe we can do other things I like, whatever I like. Good Lord. I ignored her but asked if sex is all what Tony wants. Jill says she doesn't know what Tony wants. We all know what Tony wants. The sudden romantic interest in her is a complete surprise. Yeah, I'm so surprised. And she's been completely honest with Tony. They are only friends. She said if I want it, she'll never see him again. She'll call him right now and tell him to get lost. I told him I don't care what she does as long as it doesn't affect my son. She didn't call him. I asked if she ever hooked up with him in college. Drum roll. She paused, thinking about what to tell me, what to edit out. She knows I won't believe her that there was nothing between them in college. I guess she figures she had to come up with something minor she could tell me. Finally, she said they may have kissed once. Oh, okay. They've been hanging out with friends. She got drunk. Hobag Handbook, Chapter 3. She rarely drinks, so being drunk was not something she used to do. He walked her back to the dorm room. He wasn't exactly sober either. He grabbed her and he kissed her. Oh, all his fault. Pushed her down on her bed. She should have shoved him away immediately. She understands that, but she was drunk and he took her by surprise. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible for this to happen, but considering her track record here, you can't believe much what she says. Blah, 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 blah. She told him afterwards that he can never do anything like that again. And nothing else like that ever happened again with him or anyone else. She's always been faithful to me. I said, so her story is she took this guy to her dorm room where he took advantage of her. They had sex. But she still considered him a friend even though he did that to her when she was drunk. And she's still seeing him knowing he's a predator and just wants to get in her pants. Jill started crying harder than she ever had been. Again, Hobag Handbook, Chapter 2. She said they didn't exactly have sex, just some fumbling around and kissing. Oh, wait a second. A moment ago, she said they maybe only kissed once. Now we're fumbling around and kissing. Which is the story? She tried to get him off of her. She was so drunk she doesn't remember much else of what happened. I said, what happened is that Jill's lucky she didn't get pregnant. Absolute panic crossed Jill's face. She wouldn't look at me. I said, so you did get pregnant. She was howling so hard now she couldn't even talk. Looks like they did more than just kiss. She vigorously shook her head, no! I thought, boy, am I lucky to get rid of this piece of crap. I told Jill visiting hours are over. She needs to leave. Jill was still wailing when she left. That should be the title of this episode. Visiting hours are over. Amy rushed out of the room as soon as Jill closed the door. Amy said she didn't realize Tony did that to Jill when she was drunk. I don't believe a fucking thing Jill says. Jill never told her about that. Certainly, I can't hold that against Jill. It happened when Jill's vulnerable. It was one time and Jill straightened him out right now. I said there was it never happened. The chance of getting pregnant from what Jill described is very slim. Tony and Jill were lovers, not just friends. Amy said that all this happened years ago. I should let it go. It meant nothing. Jill loves me. Again, what a load of crap. Remember, Amy's the one that was cheating on your brother-in-law, Alex, all throughout college. And, hey, it happened years ago. Who cares? Right here. She's applying the same thing to your situation. You need to get your nanny and get your sister Amy the F out of your apartment, dude, out of your life. I asked Amy if she knew about the pregnancy. Amy looked down at her feet. Well, that's a yes. Finally, Amy said that Jill had to come to her when Jill went to take care of the pregnancy. So she skipped class and flew to Jill's school to be with her. I asked Amy if she could ever tell the truth about anything. She had looked at me in the eye and swore that Jill never hooked up with this guy. She said she didn't tell me because she knew I would take it the wrong way. Remember, Amy convincingly was looking him in the eye saying she never did that. There you go. I told Amy to get out of my sight. Go to her room. She did. I have to get Amy out ASAP. What'd I fucking tell you? So Jill had a S-word relationship with Tony, probably throughout college. She got pregnant and took care of it. He's here trying to reestablish that relationship. More good times with Jill. Jill also has a continuing S-word relationship with Jay. Jill's playing them off one another. She's holding an attention and validation contest with Jane and Tony as the contestants. Whoever boosts Jill's ego the most or offers her the best deal gets her as the prize. Yeah, she's a real prize. She's a blubbering, overweight pig who has a single MOM. Yeah, what a prize. If she thinks I'm going to be part of that contest, she's nuts. I have no interest in the prize. So that is my update. Well, my friend, it's been one hell of a fucking update. Eventually, Jill will leave with Tony or Jane or someone else, and she plans to take my son with her. I have a video of her saying she's absolutely going to stay here to raise my son. Maybe I can get a judge to hold her to that promise, or even give my son to me before she takes off. At the very least, I have my son with me right now. And that is the end of part 8 in this crazy edition of this story. So, bro, keep on trucking, keep consulting your dad, your uncle, and Alex, and everything like that, and I hope it goes well for you. Get a nanny, ASAP, and get rid of Amy out of the picture. You cannot trust these snakes, and get Jill's fat ass out of your life. And hopefully you get that hearing soon, and it goes goes the way you want it. But I don't think, given how these gals are incredible liars, and the waterworks and all that you're going to get your way. But I hope you do. I really do. So anyhow, guys, that is it for today. Be sure to comment down below. Let me know what you think about this. Let this guy know what you think in the comment section. And you guys got a crazy effing story to share with me, something you found online, like on Reddit, or from your personal lives that definitely warrants a video. Email me, strongsuccessfulmale@gmail.com. Just give me some time to get to it, and I will when I definitely get the chance. And be sure to like the video, share with your friends, and subscribe. I'll catch you next time.